Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is Friday, August 23rd. Well, no, it's just past midnight on Saturday, August 24th. So this is the news for Friday, August 23rd, day 912 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. I see the peeps are coming in. Hey, Mad Mike. Hey, DC. Jerry-O. You staying warm in Ireland? I heard you guys were cool. It was cool there. Hey, Fitz. Hey, Clay. Hey, Darlene. Thomas, Maddie, Wesley. Good evening. Hey, Robbo. Hey, Robbo. How you doing? Hey, Pedro the Amigo. Phoenix, thanks for liking the live. Welcome, everybody. Hey, Rob Walker. How you doing? It's Friday, and I'll tell you, I am exhausted. Forgive me as I stumble through the next hour. In the last 2 days, we had 11 hours in the car. Yesterday was like a 16-hour day, just morning to night, nonstop. Good shit. There's no two ways about it. Hey, Cheyenne. Hey, Jessica. Hey, Gilbert. Anthony, Tommy, Tom. Hey, December. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. Hey, Maddie Wright. So the Kharkiv trip, I have some thoughts on Kharkiv, but let's start where everything's happening in Kursk. Actually, since we were just in Kharkiv, let's start with what we know about the so-called Kharkiv offensive. Remember last night, I had some quotes from the brigade commander for the 3rd Assault Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, who for the last 4 days have been engaged in a pitched battle with Russian forces and have penetrated some 2 kilometers into the Russian territory, having breached Russian defenses and taken out a battalion defense position, several strongholds. There were reported to be 300 Russian casualties. And this is the kicker, boy. The Ukrainians were outnumbered in this fight 2-1. 2-1. And they beat them back. Now, I'll tell you, beyond that, I don't know anything about this battle, even where it took place on the front lines. I looked today. I searched. The operational security around this is extensive. Now, somebody had suggested, I forget who just now, but somebody had suggested that this was the beginning of a new counteroffensive. And it may be, given the level of given the fact that we don't even know where on the front this happened, it could be that it's the first move in a more complex attack. Nobody is saying anything. Nobody is saying anything except that in this 4-day pitched battle, the 3rd Assault Brigade accomplished its objective of preventing or of reducing the potential capabilities of the Russians in this area and relieving the stress on Makalivka. Now, here's the thing about the city of Makalivka. There's 4 of them, 5 of them that I know of. None of them are in Kharkiv. So I don't know what the relationship is between this battle, which they're saying was in the Kharkiv direction, and Makalivka, which the closest one is in Luhansk. So we just don't know. We just don't know. But the Ukrainians are claiming it as a huge success. And I couldn't find anything on the Telegram channels, the Russian Telegram channels, or any of the Russian mill bloggers talking about this. What are the Russian mill bloggers talking about? They're talking about what's happening in Kursk for the most part. And what's happening in Kursk is that as of today, or as of yesterday for me, Friday, August the 23rd, the Ukrainians have advanced anywhere from 28 to 35 kilometers inside of Russia. Now, What's important about that is that that whole salient keeps expanding. It's not as though it's only one direction that's moving. No, 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 no. It's all directions. They continue to move out in all directions. And the trap south of the same river has clearly been closed. So we know, anybody that follows this channel knows that that same river flows from Ukrainian border to Ukrainian border. But south of it, there's about 750 square kilometers of Russian territory. So that territory is surrounded on three sides by Ukraine already. Then you have the natural border of the river to the north. What the Ukrainians have done is blown every bridge on that river and trapped about 3,000 Russian soldiers south of it. And that trap is shut now. Not only did they take out the established bridges, but they then went out and took out the pontoon bridges that the Russians had put down to try to resupply their troops in the area. And then after they took out the pontoon bridges, they took out the engineering equipment that lays the pontoon bridges. So the equipment to put another pontoon bridge up has been destroyed and is currently smoldering on the banks of the same river. That trap is shut. Those 3,000 troops are getting ready to surrender because they are cut off from resupply. No food's coming in. No bullets are coming in. Or they're getting ready to fight to the end because those are going to be the options the Ukrainians give them, I believe. And Putin met with representatives of the Bryansk, Kursk, and Belgorod regions, and they all asked him for money. Imagine your surprise. And he said that he would work on finding federal funds for them to support and defend their regions themselves. He did not make any offers of sending in the army. He did not, right? The guy has been checked out, boy. As Putin so often does when he is under pressure and does not know what to do, things are going badly. He checks out. He runs off to Azerbaijan. He goes doing push-ups with Kadyrov in Chechnya. Why? So that he's removed from the scene of the disaster and he can come back and blame somebody else for it. Or claim that he wasn't even told. And you know what? People in Russia might be so afraid of this guy that they may not be telling him the truth. We don't really know. We don't know what he knows or when he knew it. So Putin has been checked out. I thought it was very telling that General Ben Hodges, former commander of U.S. Army Europe, referred to the Russian response to the Kursk invasion as inept, slow, chaotic, and ineffective. Also, General Hodges made a suggestion as to why Putin was off in Azerbaijan and Chechnya. The first reason was so that he could distance himself from the disaster and point the finger at others, pass the buck to them. But the other suggestion that General Hodges made was that Putin was there begging for more bodies. Azerbaijan used to be part of the CSTO, had traditionally close ties to Moscow. Could he have been asking the Azeris for some troops? Certainly he could have been asking the Chechens for troops, right? Kadyrov has already supplied barrier troops at the very least. And so we may see more of the TikTok brigades in Ukraine. Given the number of recent Akhmat brigade members that were made POWs, there's certainly room for a whole bunch more in those cells. It is worth mentioning that today is an anniversary date. Two key anniversaries. Today is the anniversary of the end of the World War II Battle of Kursk, where 4,000 tanks were lost on the Soviet and German sides. This huge tank battle, this huge battle of World War II, was the turning point in the defeat of the German war machine at that time. And it is ironic. There is an irony in the fact that German tanks are once again in Kursk, fighting the Battle of Kursk against the Russians. And that some of those German tanks came from the Czechs. We just had the anniversary of the invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1968. And today, 56 odd years later, we see Czech-donated German tanks fighting the Russians on Russian soil in Kursk. So it's worth noting the anniversary date. And though history may not repeat, it certainly rhymes. Now, the other anniversary today, of course, is the end of Prigozhin, our buddy Eugene. It was a year ago today that his plane came down in spectacular fashion over Tver in a fireball that ended not just Prigozhin, but decapitated most of the command structure of what had been the Wagner forces. Right, I know, Eli. Does it seem like a year? God, this was a fast year, wasn't it? It just flew by. So it is an important anniversary. And on this anniversary date, it is worth noting that Putin's decision to push the conscripts from Kursk back to the border and put guns in their hands and use them for defense is causing a lot of pushback inside of Russia. We see now an active campaign by Russian mothers to get their boys back, to prevent them from going to the front. It is a breach of the social contract. Conscripts of 1 year service are not to be engaged in wars on foreign soil, and they are to be used for home crisis management, not to fend off foreign armies on your soil. And so the mothers are up in arms and creating a whole bunch of new pressure on Putin to bring their boys home, get the POWs back, and not use the conscripts on the front in Kursk. Now, the effect of that is yet to be seen, but there does seem to be more and more, I don't want to say dissent, because it's not really dissent, but it is that passive-aggressive, psychopathic way of speaking around a topic that you have to do in Russia when you're criticizing the boss. Otherwise, you're served plutonium tea or shown to a nearby 7th-story window. There does seem to be more of that criticism, not criticism, of Putin and the regime in the Kremlin than we have seen to date. There's definitely more of that happening these days. Modi is here in Kyiv and had talks with Zelensky. It appears that the Indian prime minister wants to be part of the solution and has offered to broker peace talks between Kyiv and Moscow. He said, in fact, I have a quote, "As a friend and partner, we hope for a solution and to be part of that solution." That was Modi's comment to Zelensky today. Now, in addition to the talk, and there was quite a bit of talk that didn't mean that much, but was friendly in its nature. In fact, seemed to be a friendliness between Zelensky and Modi, as Zelensky at one point hugged Modi in what appeared to be a fraternal embrace. Now, they additionally signed 4 bilateral security agreements. So the two nations, this makes India, if I'm not mistaken now, the 27th nation to sign a bilateral security agreement with Ukraine since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. That's a big deal. Ukraine can demonstrate that the world is on its side. the largest democracy in the world, just codified its support for Ukraine. Now, where that goes and how much we can count on the Indians is another question, but they do seem to be on board. According to the ISW, Russian forces continue to advance in Pokrovsk and, in fact, are now within artillery range. And so the far eastern edge of Pokrovsk is beginning to feel the effects of concentrated, consistent, pathological artillery strikes. The ISW went on to say that there had been concerns around a potential encirclement of Ukrainian forces by the Russian forces. Our fears in that regard seem to have been alleviated today. According to the ISW, thanks, Alex, it appears that the Ukrainians were able to make a withdrawal under fire, a successful withdrawal under fire, and avoided encirclement. The Russians, of course, took advantage of their withdrawal and advanced, but they continued to advance at a pace of less than 5 kilometers a week. Now, that's a big uptick because it took them 6 months to go the 50 kilometers from Avdiivka to where they are right now, about 15 kilometers from Pokrovsk. And I would point out that it has been a highly attritional sacrifice for the Russians. Now, Ben Hodges, I was listening to Ben Hodges today. He is skeptical of the importance of this advance. Very skeptical. According to him, right, it took 6 months to go 50 kilometers at great cost. And it's one city. It's one city, not even a particularly important city, a city of about 50,000 people. And while, yes, the road that is the logistics support hub for the Ukrainians in the Donbass goes through that city, and so it will be cut off, the Ukrainians have another road 24 kilometers back that could do the same job. And so it's not clear that it's that big a deal if Kursk is lost, especially if it is lost at great cost to the Russians, and it makes possible the advances that we're seeing in Kursk, which is what General Hodges' analysis seemed to indicate, that those Kursk advances are far more critical and are going to do that. It's important for us as allies of Ukraine to trust the Ukrainian armed forces. General Hodges did not discuss the question of operational security in this Kursk advance. But I want to touch on this a minute, because when I've been listening to so much analysis and analysts' opinions about the Kursk offensive, and the one thing that keeps coming up consistently from every analyst is, wow, how great the operational security was for the Kursk incursion. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody knew it was coming. It was suddenly just realized. And I think it's important to note, I've seen a few analysts, Georgie from Ukraine Matters, he was the first guy I think I heard to say this, but others have echoed this sentiment, and I do as well, that maybe the reason that they had good operational security on this Kursk thing is because they didn't tell the West. And it embarrasses me that this is probably correct. We have a problem that we in the West have got to deal with. And that is this entrenched diplomatic corps that has been dealing with Russia so long as a partner that they continue to do so, as if Russia can be trusted, as if Russia is a good faith partner. They are not. They are not. And that's what the Ukrainians get right about Russia, that we in the West get wrong. And that's why, just like General Hodges says, we got to trust the Ukrainians. They're doing the right thing. With Kursk, they're probably just trading a little land for time and for important gains in another critical axis of this war that goes far beyond just the land they're taking. The political ramifications for Putin of having part of Russia under the Ukrainian thumb are extraordinary. Can you imagine if the Ukrainians got to the Kursk power station, just wildly dreaming here for a minute? Let's dream with me, right? Everybody dream with me. Let's do one of these visualization exercises where we manifest the future, shall we? Manifest this future with me. The Ukrainians take the Kursk nuclear power station from the Russians. They then reroute the power to Kharkiv and Sumy, and they use the Russian power plant to replace the power plants that the Russians destroyed in the north of the country last winter. Wouldn't that be poetic justice? Wouldn't that be a world where you felt like there was some justice in it? In my opinion, it certainly would. Now, look, that's probably not even a maximalist goal of this campaign, but it is nice to dream a little dream with me, isn't it? Now, Ant says he'd rather get Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant back. And I don't blame you, Ant. The problem is that Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is in Zaporizhzhia. And it's going to take an awful lot to get Putin to trade that away for anything, because Zaporizhzhia has been annexed. It is now Russia. Right? In the mind of this genocidal lunatic psychopath in the Kremlin, it's now Russia. So, and look, we don't know. We don't even know if the Ukrainians are really headed to target or capture the Kursk nuclear power plant. It appears increasingly less likely that the initial stage of this operation will attempt to straighten out that international border, as I've been suggesting. Increasingly, it appears that the Ukrainians are going to use the rivers as natural boundaries. And so the initial phase of the operation appears to be to secure and hold some of this land while increasing the exchange bank of POWs so that they can get their people back, while creating internal domestic pressure on Putin to do something about this war. Or even divert troops from the Eastern Front into Russia to take on the Ukrainians on their home territory. All of those things are likely primary, secondary, and tertiary goals of this operation. And it appears that the Ukrainians are firing on all cylinders and hitting every one of these goals. Okay, so there's been a trade-off here. Along the front line down in Donbass and Donetsk, there's been a high rate of reduction in the number of glide bombs that we're seeing hit the Ukrainians. It's something like 10% of the number of glide bombs are coming in today that were before the Kursk incursion. But there is a price to pay for that. And that price is being paid in Sumy, where the staging area for the Kursk incursion is. Sumy has seen an uptick in glide bomb hits this week. And so they are getting pounded. That's not the only place that's getting pounded. You know what's getting pounded? Russian cities in Russian territory. The Russians have now opened up with artillery and glide bombs on their own towns and villages, because they are a one-trick pony that can only do scorched earth. There's no other strategy coming out of Russia, it appears. Despite the fact that on Soliev Live the other night, one of the pundits said, no one wants to carpet bomb Russia. Well, somebody should talk to the people that are working on the hard points, because it appears somebody does. For her part, Presidential nominee Kamala Harris said, "I will stand strong with Ukraine and NATO and will not cozy up to tyrants and dictators," and pledged renewed commitment to the Ukrainian armed forces and the people of Ukraine as part of her acceptance of the Democratic nomination for president. Thanks, Eli. In Russia on Fire, the oil depot, one of the biggest in Russia, right, with 74 storage tanks of like 5 metric tons of diesel per tank and a bunch of gasoline tanks as well, or natural gas tanks, combination of those, is burning like the pit of hell itself. It seems unstoppable. And just to make sure it stayed unstoppable, last night the Ukrainians hit it with drones again, further expanding the fire. We're up to close to 2/3 of the tanks now engulfed, and the fire continues to spread toward the gas tanks. When those go, it's going to be a fireworks display like we haven't seen in this war. It's the biggest storage. It's one of the biggest storage facilities in all of Russia. Huge, huge. And it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt because not only are they losing all that fuel, they're losing the place where they keep it. That's going to be a problem. There has been a lot of so a couple things. Last night, we were talking about the valuation of the ruble. And if you recall, for anybody that was here last night, I just did a little quick math in my head, and I suggested that the ruble is down 4.5%. Well, I should not do math in my head. I apologize. I was mistaken. The correct data, if we take a step back and look at the real numbers, the ruble has lost since the Kursk invasion about 8% of its value. 8%. Now, this is driven not so much by the Kursk invasion, though that's undoubtedly having an impact. Any trust that people had in the Russian economy or the ruble is being eroded by the fact that Russia can't keep its land. However, the real driver here is that the Russian central bank has stopped buying rubles. Now, if you guys remember, when the full-scale invasion happened, the bottom fell out of the ruble. Putin's told the central bank, fix it. And so over the last year and a half, the Russian central bank has raised interest rates by a full 1,500 basis points. They're up to 18% now, the core interest rate in Russia. They engaged in currency controls. Russians are now being forced. They can't hold dollars. They can't hold euros. They're being forced to convert that foreign currency back into rubles, creating an artificial demand for rubles. And then the big prop that the central bank gave to the price of the ruble was they entered the market buying rubles, again, to create artificial demand and prop up the price. Well, they can't do it anymore. They don't have the money. They don't have the money to buy their own money. That's not funny. That's not that funny. Well, no, it is. It's funny to me anyway. They don't have the money to buy their own money. And so the Russian central bank has stopped propping up the ruble by buying rubles in the open market. And in just 2 weeks, we have seen the currency valuation erode by 8%, almost double what I suggested last night it was. In addition, there are other economic indicators that everybody should take a look at so that they feel good about not investing money in Russia or keeping your money in rubles. So, for example, the Siberia 2 gas line project is officially dead. Mongolia is not going to participate. They are out. And if they are out, the deal is dead. So Siberia 2 is dead, which is good news. The internal interest rate we talked about is at 18%. The one economic indicator that I didn't mention yet is is inflation, which the official number for inflation in Russia is 9.1%, where inflation in the whole rest of the world, interest rates in the rest of the world are all coming down. In Russia, they are off the hook. And according to Hankey's at Johns Hopkins University, this number is likely bullshit, that the real core inflation rate in Russia is likely closer to 22%. Russia, now this is interesting to me, or not interesting to me, it's typical. It's typical of what we think about when we think about monarchs and kings and absolute rulers and 20th century dictators. What do? They shut down the press. Now, we know that inside of Russia, they've been shutting down VPNs so that the average Russian can't get out of the Russian internet to get real news. In addition to shutting down VPNs, they've shut down social media networks. So you don't have any Instagram in Russia, right? You don't have other social media platforms. That now they're going after YouTube, Telegram, Signal, and WhatsApp. They're taking them offline so that people inside of Russia can't even talk about what's happening in Kursk to each other, right? They're shutting down, they're forcing the Russian population into an information vacuum where the only knowledge they have comes from the state media. Now, further to that, they want to shut down the media everywhere in the world. And so today, arrest warrants were issued for CNN journalists, Italian journalists, Ukrainian journalists, any journalist that had participated in reporting from the occupied territories now has an arrest warrant against them in Russia. And they're looking to put these guys away forever, is what they're looking for. Or in the case of the war blogger Zenov, he has said, no offense, guys, we're going to unalive you all, and has pointedly threatened their lives, which, of course, threatening the lives of journalists is as Russian as caviar. Ukraine has temporarily suspended bringing journalists into Russia. So now we think that that's because of the safety of the journalists, that a counteroffensive from the Russians is expected soon, and they don't want the journalists in there. I mean, I'll tell you, you guys know I'm not a journalist, right? I'm just an idiot with an iPhone and a big mouth. But boy, if I could go to Kursk and show you Kursk through my eyes, I would be there in a second. So if there's any, Ukrainian security services people listening, right, maybe think about sending me to Kursk. You don't want Nick Offerman, or I'm sorry, not Nick Offerman, what's his name? Nick Oswald from CNN. You don't want him getting killed out there, right? But I'm disposable. Don't worry about me, right? I could go. Run, I'm just saying. I mean, Kyiv's under threat anyway, right? We all know that the State Department, the U.S. State Department, has said that there is an increased chance of attacks against civilians all across Ukraine. And we are advised as Americans to leave the country ASAP. Update on the Marinovka airfield. We know that the ammo dump was hit. We know that 3 days prior to the attack on that airfield, there were 14 Su-24s and 15 Su-34s. And we didn't know their fate until now. Today, the Ukrainian Armed Forces, the GUR, the Intelligence Directorate of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, is saying that they destroyed 2. Who's playing bingo? Who's playing Russian aerospace bingo? Mark your cards. 2 Su-34s destroyed. 1 Su-24 destroyed. 2 Su-34s damaged. 1 Su-24 damaged. Boom, boom, boom. So that's still going on. Francis Farrell, who was a reporter for the Kyiv Independent, who now has an arrest warrant out from the Russian government, did a great video inside of Kursk, in Sudza specifically, talking to local Russians. Guys, for anybody that's seriously interested in what's happening inside of Ukrainian occupied Russia, I encourage you to take a look at the Kyiv Independence YouTube channel and give a listen to Francis Farrell. He did a great job. He talked to the locals. One of the things that he highlighted was the effect of 25 years of Putin's social contract with the Russian people. For 25 years. Now, it's not just Putin, of course. Putin just adapted the same policy from 80 years of Soviet repression, which was just an extension of 400 years of Tsarist oppression. And basically that was, you as the common people have, Tsar crown, thanks, Dive Hard. You as the common people have no power. You have no say in anything. We are in charge. You stay out of politics. We will keep you safe and fed. That is the social contract in Russia. And it has bred an entire population that when Ukrainian tanks come across the border, do nothing. Do nothing. They don't fight back. They don't demonstrate. In fact, one woman talking to Francis Farrell said the words, "Your government, our government, what does it matter? They're all the same." That's the lie that Putin's been telling his people for 25 years. It's no better in America. They don't have more rights than you. They're just as corrupt as it is here. He's been telling this lie for so long that now when a foreign enemy enters your country, you all start talking about how you don't get involved in politics. One government is good as another. We don't really care. You reap what you sow. There is no entrenched patriotism among the Russian people. There is only a fear of the people in charge and a desire to live, because those are the only options they've had for fucking 500 years. And isn't it about time that the Ukrainians liberated them from that? New U.S. military aid package is set to be announced very shortly. It is believed that it will have javelins, air defense missiles, HIMARS ammo, anti-drone equipment, anti-armor weapons, and 155 millimeter shells. And I think that's it for me. That's the top line today, guys. I want to send out a very special thank you to the sponsors of tonight's live and the sponsors of the Kharkiv trip, without whom it would not have been possible. First and foremost, of course, David Frazier, who got me there and back again safely. Thank you, David. That's from UA Flag Tesla. If you don't follow him, give him a follow. I guess Jessica's here, and she's trying to build up his Twitter following. So if you're on Twitter, maybe follow him there too. And then special thanks to the sponsors, Tom Bates, Marion Fuller, Leo Ring, Roy, and Chris Carter. Thank you, guys. I literally could not do this without you. Okay, so that's the highlights of the day. We'll go to Q&A now, and we have about 20 minutes for Q&A. Just before we do that, let me thank the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk: Vanetta, Cheyenne, PT, John Williams, J, and Travis. Thank you so much to Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps public group over on the Book of Faces, where these live recordings are always reposted. So if you miss a live and you want to catch it, it's there on the thing. I know, Blue Skies, people are still on Twitter. It's a cesspool of Nazi propaganda, in my opinion. And I do not spend any. Occasionally, I'll follow a link to a Twitter post for more information about a story. But beyond that, it's garbage. It's garbage. And being on there just puts money in Musk's pocket. And that's not something I'm interested in doing personally. But my buddy David is. So if you're on the Twitter there, maybe give him a follow. Anyway, thanks to Nightshade, who has the Peters Peeps public group, and to Vanetta Laird, who has the Dismantle Project 2025 group on the Book of Faces, as well as the Google Doc share where our email message templates to Congress, the Senate, and the White House can be found, requesting a no-fly zone west of the Dnipro and unrestricted use of ATACMS in Russia. Thanks to Lars, who has the Alexievich archive and the Discord server. Okay, questions, comments. Ant mentions that tomorrow is Independence Day for Ukraine. We should be really careful in the whole of Ukraine. Yeah, Ant, I did think about that. It is Independence Day, and Putin may want to punish Ukraine for that. But we'll see. I was invited to a celebration lunch tomorrow. I'm going to go to that. And I intend to go out and celebrate. Like Obi-Wan said, full of scum and villainy. That's our Russia. Jessica says that over on the Twitter, they're fighting Russian propaganda and raising money for Ukraine. Okay. Right? Use the enemy's tools against them. Did you see where Putin was in Chechnya and literally kissed the ring of Kadyrov? Yeah, well, I mean, Bobby, it was a golden Quran, So to press your lips to gold, that's probably a fetish of this bastard's. Thank you, Eli. Couldn't do it without you. Happy Independence Day, Ant. Happy Independence Day to all the Ukrainians out there. Ukraine was, is, and will remain free. Damn Skippy. Russian propaganda focusing on move to Russia, short on bodies, talent, taxpayers. Yeah, Dive Hard. So the Russians have created a community, an actual development. I think they've started with 280 homes, where if you're an American conservative and you want to move to Russia, you can get a house in this complex, very reasonably by American standards, and you can bring all your time, talents, money, racism, misogyny, backward thinking. You can bring all of that with you to Russia and leave us out of it. And I encourage American conservatives to do just that. The MAGA crowd especially, you can all go. Please, for the love of God, go. You too, Anthony. Oh, please let them all go to Russia. Did you see the Rostov fire setting fire to houses? I didn't, Mel. Has that spread to houses around there? If there's anything by there, it's gonna be in trouble. But no, I didn't know that this is the first I'm hearing that it may have spread beyond the territory of the oil storage facility itself. Chris, it's very warm here. It was plus 40 today, which is low hundreds in Fahrenheit. It's awful. And I don't have air conditioning. And I'm old and fat. And yeah, it's got to be 82 in here. It's got to be. How much is all of that oil burning worth? Wow, Bobby. I don't know. A lot of money. I mean, a lot of money. I don't know how many gallons are in a metric ton of diesel, so I can't figure it out. Is PT here tonight? He usually does the math for us on this kind of thing. But I don't know. $60 a barrel, that's crude price PT, right? There's 42 gallons in a barrel. A barrel is $62 or $60. I can think now is suggesting it's $1 billion. I don't know if it is. Yeah, Chris, absolutely. I am always happy to meet folks and show them around a little bit. Happy to do that. No, I don't have a fan even. Well, no, I have lots of fans. You guys are all fans, right? Yeah. Canadian right-wing family of 10 moved to Russia. Oh, yeah, and they did. And they had all their assets frozen by the Russians. And then they were thrown out after 3 months. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know where they are, if they figured out a way to stay. I don't know the answer to that. And they have a funny name. I forget their name. But that was a shit show. The wife went on to YouTube and posted a video complaining about how their assets had been frozen and how they have to leave the country to get another visa and what it's going to cost them with their 10 kids to do it. And she thought she was living in a world where she could go online, make a video that criticized the Russian government. I mean, these people, what world do they live in? No, they took that video down real fast and changed their tune real fast after a visit from some FSB thugs. Cyberdoc is suggesting just say a shit ton. Yeah, but Cyberdoc, you have to remember it's a metric shit ton, which is bigger than an American shit ton. So I'd have to do some math again. Hey, Roy Daniels. Will we see an effect? Nightshade has the right question here, I think. Will we see an effect with fuel shortage on the front line? I am certain that is the effect that the Ukrainians are hoping for. I'm certain that is the effect they want to see. Because it wasn't just that oil depot, right? But those 30 train cars of fuel headed across on the ferry the other night that got blowed up too. And that means diesel in Crimea is going to suddenly be very expensive. I actually have a friend. Let me see if I can get some pictures of, gas station price lists. Let's see if we can get some pictures of that. Jedi, you're funny. 315 gallons in a metric ton of diesel fuel. Only 315 gallons, huh? So that means a gallon of diesel weighs about 6 pounds is what that would mean, right? A little more. Okay, so let's assume for a second that that's right. 315 gallons times 5 is 1,500. 1,545. No, I'm sorry. 75. 1,545 gallons per tank. And what does diesel cost these days? Does anybody know what it costs in the U.S.? Who drives diesel? $15.75 times 7 pounds per gallon. Okay. So I wasn't far off there. Anybody got a diesel price? I want to say it was like $3.45 when I left the U.S. $3.60 says Clay. All right. So that's $5,670 per tank times 74 tanks. That's only about $500,000. It's about $500,000. Hobo says in Washington State it's $5 a gallon, but the West Coast tends to be far more expensive. Okay, we have 9 minutes. And so again, let me thank, just before we go, everybody who made the Kharkiv trip possible. Of course, first and foremost, David Frazier, then Tom Bates, M. Fuller, Leo Ring, Roy Daniels, and Chris Carter. Guys, you know I could not do this without you. And I couldn't run this thing every day without the moderator team, Cheyenne, Vanetta, PT, John Williams, Jay, and Travis. Thank you, guys. What do they use the kerosene for? Aircraft? Me too, common sense. Don't know. Kerosene is used for heating, certainly. I don't know of its use in aviation. One tank is 5 metric tons. Hey, Dave Hayes. Oh, maybe I've got it wrong, Dave. Maybe I've got it wrong. My understanding was that each of those 74 tanks was 5 metric tons. But I could easily have gotten that wrong. Thanks, PH. Thanks for bearing with me. I try to be accurate, but of course, dudes, I am exhausted. 11 hours in the car and a 16-hour day yesterday. I am tired. Happy Independence Day to everybody. So your best. Thank you, Doc. I sure do appreciate it. Everybody knows Dave Hayes here, I hope. And I encourage you to follow him here on the Tickety Talk. A good guy. And definitely a Ukraine cheerleader. Let's hope we have a calm night. Listen. No, I'm wrong. The drones have a very specific, 2-cycle engine sound to them, right? And sometimes a motorbike on the highway will sound similar. And I think that's what that was just now. Could you hear it, really? Yeah, dude. Yeah, that's a thing. We get a lot of, well, it doesn't matter. All right. Anything else, guys? Final thoughts? Final questions? I'm going to hit the hay. I got to tell you. I'm exhausted, but I feel good. Kharkiv was a powerful experience for me with some incredible people who are doing incredible things. And I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to be there with them. And I hope that the videos that came out of Kharkiv help to give some insight into kind of the grind of life here and that ineffable resilience of the Ukrainian people, which is just everywhere. All right. The Jedi, I live in a town where there is a curfew. And so this program begins just at the same time that curfew does. And I did that not just because it's 5 o'clock East Coast time, which is a good time to reach the US and Europe, but I did it because it meant that I would always have to be home in time to do it or risk arrest. There's no going to a bar for a beer right now in this town, pal. No, there is not. It's a whole nother world, brother. It's a whole nother world. All right, my friends, thank you so much for being there for me. And because you are there for me, I can be here for you. Make it a great day.